Hello everybody and welcome back to World of Warships Legends. My name is Spartan Elite 43 and tonight and tomorrow and probably a couple of days we are going to be taking a look at the Italian destroyers and giving our first opinions or our first impression on these ships. So, without further ado, we are going to start with the Maestrale. To start out, our commander is Giuseppe Sigala Fulgosi. We are running Eric Bay Jersey Swirsky. Yes, you can swap one of these out for William Sims or something like that to give you some more hit points if you want. Honestly, you need, at least in my opinion, you need some concealment on these things because they're rough otherwise. But we don't have this guy. It's actually this is the wrong commander. We actually ended up changing our commander later on to Luigi Rizzo. So, yeah, keep that in mind. These ones I left as what we were already playing so that you guys can see what I started out playing. I may end up changing this one at some point. I don't know. I'm trying different things, essentially. But definitely, probably should go with Luigi Rizzo on all of these. Just throwing that out there. But for this build, I was running Eric Bay, Jersey Swirsky. We're running Contact is Imminent for a little bit more torp speed, Flank Speed for a little bit more movement speed. We're running Perceptive and Sidestep to increase our range and incoming fire dispersion, though it does slow your rudder shift down a little bit. Now, we also have Unstoppable. One thing I would say, if you don't want to run extra torp speed, because I'll be honest, the torps on these things are terrible. The torps are legitimately like the worst possible thing on these ships. But if you want to take and get rid of the torp speed boost, run this. This would allow you, if you run Quick Fix, which is probably the better bet, if you run Quick Fix, then you could swap this and actually use the Rather Be Torching. It reduces your HE shell damage, but increases your chance of setting fires. And again, this goes up for each level of your thing. So that is something you could do if you were interested in that. So just keep that in mind. As for our other build, if you guys want to see that, we have Luigi Rizzo, again, Eric Bay, Jersey Swirsky for the concealment. Then we've got Observant Rage, which decreases reload time. We've got Swordfish, which increases the main gun SAP shells damage, which is what you're going to be using most of the time anyway, or at least that's what I tend to use most on these. And then we've got Perceptive, again, because I like being able to find and destroy destroyers. It's what these things do best. And then Smoke on the Water for a little bit extra smokescreen dispersion time and deployment time. And then, of course, Unstoppable again. And again, you could add some extra XP if you want, or HP, sorry. This is probably the better commander in my opinion, but just a thought, you know. It also has, his base trait is engine boost cooldown time is reduced as well as engine boost duration is increased. So, again, I think Luigi Rizzo probably the best bet, but the one that I was playing in the video that you're about to see was Giuseppe Sigala Fulgosi. So, let's look at our actual build. We're running Aiming System Mod 1, nothing special there. We are fully upgraded. We do have a Type 1 camo on there for a little bit more concealment. Again, trying to make sure that we have as little time between us and the destroyer that we're going after. Remember, I play the destroyers, or especially gunboat destroyers, I play as counter destroyers. I go super aggressive, get rid of the destroyers. They tend to not do as much damage that way, but at least it tends to lead to more wins, at least from what I've seen. Survivability with this build, 13,400, so pretty squishy. Main battery, you get the 120mm 50 caliber auto 1931s. You get 4 of them in a 2x2 configuration. They fire out to 10.5 kilometers. The reload is 5.8 seconds. 180-degree turn time is 12.9 seconds. HE shell maximum damage is 1,750 with an 8% chance to set fire. So it actually has a higher than average HE fire chance. And then maximum SAP shell damage is 2,600. For torpedoes, again, you might as well forget you even have torpedoes. These things are absolutely awful. You get 6 533mm torpedoes that reload relatively quickly in a minute and 20 seconds. 180-degree turn time on torpedo tubes is not important at all, 6 seconds. Maximum damage, though, is terrible, 8,600. Torpedo detectability by sea is 1.1 kilometers. So at least they're somewhat sneaky, but at the same time, they're not. And they only do 60 knots. And the worst part is they actually get slower down the line. Like, I think the Tier 7 has 57 knot torpedoes, but they go further. So there's that. AA defense just doesn't really exist. You get 13.2 millimeters 76 caliber Beretta 1931s. You get 4 of those, and they reach out to 1.2 kilometers and do 8 damage per second. And then you have the 40 millimeters 39 Vickers tourney. You get 2 of those, doing 11 damage per second, reaching out to 2 kilometers. So yeah, you have basically no AA. Maneuverability, though, is pretty decent. 39.5 knot maximum speed without the engine boost, 590 meter turning circle, 2.8 second rudder shift. These things are pretty agile, at least early on. Concealment. With this build, 5.8 kilometer detection by sea, 3 kilometers detection by air, 2 is always guaranteed, and 2.2 kilometer smoke firing penalty. So decent in that aspect. Here are my standard battles. As you can see, I played 1 game in this, and I got the game that I wanted to show you guys. So keep that in mind. There's very limited experience, but again, it's Tier 4. Like, it really doesn't take much to show off a ship at Tier 4. And get a feel for what it's good at, what it's not good at. And like I said, these things, especially early on, are very good at getting rid of destroyers. As you go up into the higher tiers, you get countered more by radars and sonars, so they tend to be a little bit less effective in that role, and it really does struggle at higher tiers. But we'll get into that when we get there. As for armor, you don't have any. You're a destroyer. Okay? Exhaust smoke generator can dispense a smoke screen and stay hidden at full speed. That's the Italian full speed smoke. It has SAP shells, and it is exposed because it has below average concealment. So keep that in mind. Even with our concealment build, we're not exactly the sneakiest thing on the ocean. But when you build full concealment and with the speed that these things can go, especially with the engine boost, even though the engine boost is very short duration, the engine boost still allows you to get in there and engage a destroyer very quickly. And usually if you engage a destroyer faster than they can get away, you can kill it very quickly with these SAP shells. A series of destroyers that exerted substantial influence on the development of this ship type in the Italian Navy. Among their key features were a high running speed, a more sophisticated main battery, and access to anti-submarine armament. She entered service 1934. There were 4 of them in the series. Other than that, let's take a look at it. It's a nice little boat. I don't really hate any of the Italian boats, at least from their looks. They're not bad looking ships. The one thing I will say that I do hate about these Italian boats, you see this third mount right here in the middle? This is where the third gun mount is going to be moving forward. As you progress down the line, you're actually going to get an extra gun mount right here in the middle of these torp tubes. It makes the torp angles horrendous for the rear turret. Like, the rear torp angles are stupidly bad. Like, it's so bad. And that's one of the few downsides of these ships. But with all of that being said, let's get to our gameplay. Alrighty, so we're going to be on northern waters, and we are in the Maestrale. Now, like I said, these particular ships are most people will probably use them as kitey HE spammers. The SAP is very good on these though, especially early on. The guns don't really get any better from here on out. You get a couple of more guns, like I think in the next tier you get an extra gun, and then from there on it becomes a double turret, so you end up with a 6-gun broadside, which is really nice for pretty much anything. The reload's not the greatest, as you'd expect. When you get to shoot SAP, the game just does not want you to have a fast reload. But in the same sentence, or in the same thought, like, these things are actually pretty nasty early on. And they're still nasty against destroyers later on, but like I said, the biggest deal with going against destroyers later on is that a lot of them have sonars, they have radars, you know, there's a lot of radars around, so you've got to be careful. You've got to be a lot more careful later on. But that doesn't mean you can't go after destroyers and be super aggressive with them. Because the SAP will, you'd be surprised what the SAP can do. But we'll show you guys at least what I have enjoyed. And I've pulled off some pretty ridiculous things in these little Italian destroyers. I haven't had those ridiculous games, though. You know what I mean? Like I said, you guys know the way I play destroyers. I tend to play for the win. I don't play like super high damage. I'm not kitey destroyer spamming HE all the time. Like, I play to win. I'll go after destroyers. I try to counter them. I try to grab the caps where I can. And I tend to be a little bit aggressive in doing that. Sometimes that doesn't end well for me. Most of the time it ends with a win, because if you kill the enemy destroyers, especially early on, you generally win the match. Because destroyers have the biggest impact on who wins and who loses. They have the best ability to move around the map undetected and make a huge impact. The biggest thing that I want you guys to know is that these torpedoes are awful. If you've ever played the Venom for the Americans, or it's not the Motsuki. What's the other one? There's another Japanese destroyer. I can't think of what it is. It's on the second line going towards the Akazuki. It's tier 4 as well, but it's essentially the Kamikaze, only it has weaker torpedoes. But it reloads the torps in like 40 seconds, and they do like no damage. Like, you can hit a battleship with all of your torpedoes and watch it just laugh at you and then come kill you. That's what this thing is. And that's what these Italians are going to do from here on out. Now, at this tier, the torpedoes are still going to do what they do, right? I mean, you got ships running around with very little health, so it's not going to do you a whole lot of good. But here you can see we do have an Omaha out ahead of us. I know it's a Rattlehead, but it's an Omaha or a Marblehead, whatever you want to call it. Same thing. There's like 30 of them in the game now. But we get detected by the planes, so we go ahead and hit our smoke screen here, hoping to go dark so we don't get reset. And fortunately, we get out of there without being reset. 20 seconds, we're going to have this base cap. That is our goal here. And that's when the enemy destroyers start popping up right next to us. We got the Podvoisky initially, so we're going to go ahead and target him with the SAP. And like I said, the SAP is nasty on these. And I've heard people say that these are not the most accurate guns in the world, but I haven't had any trouble with the accuracy. I've more had trouble with the fact that they're very slow, like projectiles. Like, you have to lead them a lot more than you'd expect, especially in a knife fight versus other destroyers. But as you can see, I mean, we only have 4 guns on this ship, and we're landing multiple hits every single time. And once you do, I mean, we landed all 4 shells. Some of them are shattering or bouncing, but for the most part, especially if they open up the angle, you're going to punish them. And this Motsuki has found out the hard way that he's done. Like, there's just no getting away from this. There we get some poor RNG, obviously, but again, not going to be the end, or it's going to be the end for him. Now, obviously, the enemy Rattlehead is shooting at us, so we got to be careful there. But we're trying to stay away from him, keep our distance. We managed to get the cap. We've done our job. Both of the destroyers are down. Now, all we got to do is survive, and now we can start to maybe take some risks. Now, obviously, I don't recommend doing what I'm about to do for most players, because you're going up against a ship that, while it is very low armored, has a lot of firepower, and you don't have that many hit points. And like I said, I tend to go for concealment, so I don't have a lot of hit points to begin with. But these torpedoes are so slow, and they don't do a lot of damage. But they do have decent range. Even at the lower tiers, these things have decent range. So you can kind of use them as area denial. And that's probably your best use for them. Unless, of course, you can use the smoke and the engine boost to YOLO somebody. But even then, like I said, if you YOLO a full health enemy, you're not guaranteed to kill them. And the worst part is, you're not even guaranteed to hit all of your torpedoes. Because the torpedoes are so slow, it's actually very difficult to land all of your torpedoes on an enemy ship that you're trying to YOLO. Because all they have to do is turn at all. And even at extremely close ranges, they can turn their ship enough that your torpedoes miss a couple of them. And that's all it takes to leave somebody alive, and you just don't live in these ships. So here you can see I'm trying to play a little bit passively here. I know what that ship is. I know what it's capable of. So I don't want to end up in a gunfight with it. So needless to say, I'm going to end up in a gunfight with it. basically, we're trying to, like, get this guy's attention, hoping that he stops what he's doing. Maybe he backs up or something, changes course. We want to try to bait him into running into our stuff. Now, you can see we are using the SAP. Now, this is going to lead me to another thing. Now, I know that the HE in these ships can set fires. But I tend to use the SAP more than anything. And I kind of wish in my personal, like, play style that I would actually have the option to have AP and SAP, which is the more normal thing. Usually you don't get HE and SAP. Usually you get AP and SAP. But in these destroyers, you get HE and SAP. And what that means is when you get opportunities like broadside cruisers at close range, you can't Citadel them. Which means you're at a huge disadvantage compared to other destroyers. Because normally, if I would go head-to-head with this Rattlehead and he gives me a broadside, I'd be Citadeling him with a destroyer. Same thing for any of the Japanese cruisers and stuff. And one of my favorite things to do at these low tiers is to charge a light cruiser with a destroyer and have AP for their broadside, because you're going to kill them faster with Citadels than they can kill you with their high explosive. And you just can't do that with these, unfortunately. And they have usually just enough armor that your SAP doesn't do full damage either, which is really unfortunate. Now, obviously, if you catch their bow side plating or their superstructure, whole other ballgame. Learning where to aim and learning where to exploit weak spots for these SAP shells is key. Obviously, HE is going to come in handy. We're going to use some of that here in this one as well. We got a New York. We're going to showcase the fire chance. And like I said, these things do have decent fire chance. Remember, most like 127 millimeter guns, which are the 5-inch guns, usually have like a 5, maybe 7% chance to set fires. And these actually have an 8% chance, and they're only 120s. But the reason their fire chance is higher is because they're not going to pin anything. Like, these shells legitimately don't pin crap. But there we get a good shot in the superstructure. We actually do pin the superstructure, but we get a fire. He's going to end up damage conning that as he goes around the corner, which is going to leave him open for getting yeeted by something later on. Or at least burnt by the carrier or whatever. So we're going to go ahead, ignore him. We've got torpedoes out. You know, again, area denial, just putting them out there, hoping for the best. You're not guaranteed to get anything, but we're going to start chasing down this other battleship. This game is literally up in the air right now. Could go either direction. We have the points lead. We have the caps lead. We want to try to protect that. And at this point, I was feeling pretty confident in our team, but unfortunately, our team is going to try to throw, and they do it at like the worst possible time. Like, I start to engage, and that's when the enemy, or that's when our team starts to just yeet themselves into oblivion for no reason whatsoever. But here we've got, I've never even heard of this Nyaz Suvorov. I've literally never heard of this. If anybody else knows what this ship is, let me know, because I've never heard of this ship in my life. So, if you know what it is, if it's new, if it's old, I don't know. I've never seen this ship before. So, I just know it's a Russian battleship. Or I'm assuming it's a Russian battleship. So we're just aiming high, setting him on fire. He's burning. And we're going to try to finish him off as quickly as possible. But look at the map. We have a cruiser off our bow. We have an aircraft carrier off our bow. We have a cruiser across the way as well. And we're just trying to help our team get rid of these heavy hitters. Try to put ourselves in a position to get rid of some of these people. Taking him down is a big deal. That leaves him with just the one battleship, which we already know is fighting our carrier, and our carrier should be able to yeet him into oblivion. Here we switch over to the SAP. We're taking shots at the Königsberg. Again, maybe not the best choice of ammunition here, but I tend to be pretty decent with my aim and be able to do damage regardless. Here he gets a decent shot at us while we're in our smoke screen, and we actually hit him twice. We hit him with the first shot, did like 3k damage, and then the second shot we did like 1500 to 2000 damage. Now here, once we come out of our smoke, we're going to be a lot closer, which means we're going to be much easier to finish him off, hopefully. And again, this is one of those situations where I need to aim at superstructure, and something I cannot stress more. Like, I treat these SAP rounds as if they are going to pin no matter what, and that's just not the case. They do have better pin angles than normal armor piercing, but here, going for the superstructure is the right play. We only land 2 shells there on the superstructure, but you can see we are trying to hit it even more. And you can see that time we only got 1. Come on! I just need some accuracy, please. A little bit of accuracy. There, that was better. We landed 2 shells. Come on, please. He's going to yeet me. Ouch. But we finish him off, finally. That took way longer than it needed to. Would I have finished him sooner if I used HE in that situation? I don't know. You can say yes or you can say no. I mean, it's up in the air. We did hit superstructure, so we maybe would have gotten more damage with HE. It's really anybody's guess. But we do come around the corner. We've got the Langley here, and watch this. So I was using the SAP here. The SAP is almost useless against carriers. I didn't realize this. Now, you can see I am actually pinning this carrier, but I ran into some issues with carriers where I legitimately had to YOLO them with torpedoes because I was shooting their sides with SAP and doing no damage, which is just ridiculous. Now, here, he drops a little too close. Wasn't expecting me to be going so fast or just inexperienced with arming distance. But you can see, if you do land the shells, there we actually get the rare shot through the goddamn deck of the ship because it's got the raised deck. Remember, these are like converted oil tankers or something, and they just added a flight deck on top of an existing hull. But we're doing as much damage as we can, and that's when I realized that I'm getting attacked from behind as well, so we need to be careful. But fortunately, we did enough. The game's over. We did our job. We came in clutch at the end to make sure we removed a couple of ships to make sure that our team wins this match. But top of the leaderboard, just under 1,900 base XP with 3 kills. Overall, I do like these ships at lower tier. 4, 5, 6, it starts to get questionable. And tier 7, I'll be honest, I'm just not enjoying. But we'll talk about those as we get there. If you like what I'm doing, punch the like button, leave a comment below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And as always, I will see you in the next video.